Good morning. I'm down at Fleet Services at the moment on the M3. We're heading down to, well, I'm heading down, me and my colleague down there, heading down to a place called Ringwood, which I think is in Hampshire, might be in Dorset, not entirely sure. Probably on the border or close by, but I think it's in Hampshire. We're looking at a fire damaged house. This is I think it's a 4-bed house. It's significantly damaged. And once we've done our initial assessment on that, we'll do a 3D Matterport scan, measure up photos and really work out what damage we need to repair. I've got to shoot up to Trowbridge to look into a roof space that's had a spray foam insulation installed. So yeah, been an interesting day today, and I'll catch up with you in a bit. So we're looking around a fire damaged house down in Ringwold, down in the living room, and not too much of an indication of any damage at this level. We can see some slight cracks that have opened up, some damage to the ceiling, and again some more cracks to the wall. But it's when we go upstairs that we can really see what's going on. So this was an electrical fire in the loft space, which has burnt through the trusses. This is a small extension to the main house. We'll have a look up there in a moment, but we can see that damage in the roof space is quite severe. The ceilings on the first floor, they're all going to need to come down. Some have started this job already, and we can see that this plasterboard is absolutely saturated and it's just literally falling apart in your hands. Obviously where the fire brigade have had to squirt a fair bit of water on it to get it put out. Some cables here that completely melted through. Obviously the outside sheathing, the cabling, the power has been turned off. You can just about make out here the 3 core. So where is it? So that's earth in the middle, and then live and neutral to the sides. That would once have been normal grey or white protected cable that you'd see in a property of this age. Looking up through here, we can see some fairly significant charring to the timbers. This is a 2-story rear addition that's been added at some time in the past. So this is actually a cut and pitch section of roof. But as we turn round, the main roof to the property is truss rafters, as we'd expect in a house of this age. It's early 90s, we believe. So some damage has occurred to the ceilings throughout through spread of water. But although these would need to be ordinarily repaired, we've got to take the whole lot down because the truss rafters need to come off and a new roof covering needs to be popped on the property. Okay, going up into the roof space, we can see there's blackening of the main trusses, and the mineral felt throughout the roof is absolutely black. Turn around, we can see the original cold water storage tank. Now what you find is a bit of a phenomenon with these. There is water still in that tank, and the reason being that this hasn't melted. Actually, the reason this hasn't melted is the fire's not been that great around it. But what we sometimes find is a completely charred loft with timbers looking like that everywhere, and a completely sound cold water tank in the middle of the loft. And the feed and expansion tank to the side, you can see the water's still in there. Reason for this is the boiling point of water, as we probably know, is 100 degrees C. But a fire can be over 1200 degrees C. So the boiling of the water in the tank, because of the heat, actually keeps the plastic cool enough so it doesn't burn by the fire. So even in the most damaged of loft spaces, we'll quite often see a cold water storage tank stuck in the middle of the loft, no damage whatsoever. So up in the loft space, got to be quite careful. I don't really want to go through a ceiling just yet. Never done that on a survey, done it privately when I was a kid in my parents' house, but I've never done it on a job. I don't want to. So open air view. There's a plastic pipe, not sure what that serves right this minute. That's completely melted through, and here's the some general blackening, and then moving up into charring of the original trusses in the roof space. We can see the original roof tiles that have fallen in, which again is quite normal, and then the underlay, which is their normal sarking felt underlay, has completely melted away and burnt through. So in a nutshell, we need to replace this entire roof structure, clean down the walls, seal those or render them, we would do something called thermal fogging on a job that didn't need this much work doing to it. That deneutralizes the carbon atoms from the fire and makes them essentially inert bits of dust. So this house, for some reason, has got a spine wall running through it. Trusses load on the rear wall and the front wall, but then we've got a spine wall that's been opened up at the time of construction into another little area of loft space. Get my head torch around there. So again, all of that is completely blackened. We could try cleaning down those trusses, but the fact we've got to replace half of them, we might as well just replace the whole lot. It'd be a lot easier. So what I've cleverly managed to do is to omit the sound by not turning the microphone on the little thing I've got clipped to my collar. So now we're looking inside the property and starting to measure up. We can draw down a 2D drawing from the Matterport, but that doesn't give us any scale. So what we do is we sketch the property out on the iPad and then take some general overall readings to each room, the property overall, room heights and around doors and windows. The reason we do the doors and windows is where we've got curtains, as we can just see in the background here, the Matterport doesn't know exactly where the window is. So we measure the actual location of each window from the corner to the window, across the window or the doors, and then back to the corner. This enables us to pick up the absolute accurate location of any doors and windows that's going to be required to be plotted on the drawings. Moving upstairs here into the bedroom, exactly the same again. That beam across a high level above the door there is the original outside wall of the house. So I'll pick that up separately because that will be the location where the trusses load onto, and in turn where the rear addition roof loads onto. So measuring here the height of the ceiling to the underside of the plasterboard, and we know structurally we can take off about 15mm or so. And then I measure to the underside of the beam there, which we assume is a steel beam supporting the rear wall of the building. What we're also doing here is measure again from the corner to the window, across the window, and then back to the corner or an overall. When we start the external element of our inspection, we'll quite often use our pole camera. This enables us to take a look down onto the roof from above before scaffolding or anything like that's erected, so we can get images that we wouldn't normally be able to see. So what we're doing as part of our job, we're doing a 3D scan of the building, and I'll figure out a way that I can show you what's going on. But this is our scanner. It's from a company called Matterport. This moves around in 6 little circles, 6 little increments of a circle, and there's 9 cameras that take photos as we go. So a 4-bed house like this will end up having several thousand photos that somehow get glued together to make the 3D scan work. This scan's being done by Ben. Say hello, Ben.
Hi guys.
Could you quickly explain what's going on?
So effectively I'm doing a scan of the building, as Neil said. You take loads of images throughout, and then eventually you're left with an image which is similar to what you get on Google Street View. So you'll be able to click through the house and see it as it is today. So if you've got a little question about something you wasn't quite sure what was there, we'll find you can go back onto the Matterport, see exactly where you want to look, and it saves having to have an extra journey, so it can be quite useful.
What are you doing with your iPad?
This is what I'm using to take the scans. So as I walk around the property, I take new scans, and it effectively creates a floor plan of where I've scanned. You can see the black areas represent where I haven't scanned yet. But if I go between floors, we can see what I've done already on the ground floor. So you can see it's effectively a floor plan where we can see the living area here, kitchen, all throughout the property, which will then go into a 3D view once it's uploaded to the computer.
Is this in position ready to scan?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So show us what you do and we'll get out of the way. The reason we get out of the way is because if we're caught moving in the middle of a scan, there'll just be a 3D blurred image of us. So there we go. That's the back of it, so we can do whatever we want. But as it comes round, we just want to get out of its way so that it can happily scan on its own. And we can see there it's scanning. And now it's finished. and it will just tell us when it's okay to move the tripod. Little tick, off we go, on to the next scan. I said in my introduction earlier, when I was sat at Fleet Services in the morning, that I had to go to Trowbridge after this inspection. I was wrong. That was a different day. I had to actually nip over to Cowes to look at a spray foam installation in a roof space. Doing an inspection inside a loft space, 1960s house, cut and pitch roof, semi-detached. We can see here spray foam has been applied everywhere between the rafters, with approximately 40 mil or so of the underside of the rafter evident. Quite often these spray foam installs are sold on the basis that they comply with current building regulations. It's simply not the case. Here we've got a rafter that is around 4 inches deep. The spray foam at most to the sides of the rafters is just over 2 inches. But as we can see clearer on some of these others, it starts out thick, curves in, and then comes out thick again to the sides. So this bit here is likely that we're only looking at maybe just over an inch, maybe 30 millimeters or so. Now, if this is an equivalent to PIR in terms of thermal conductivity, 30 millimeters is maybe equivalent to 100 mil mineral quilt. For this to comply with building regulations, it would need to be closer to about 6 inches or so. And if we was to insulate this roof with a PIR, we would have probably on a 4-inch rafter, we'd have 2 inches between the rafters, allowing for a 2-inch clear air gap over the top of the insulation. And then we'll put another 4 inches under the rafters all the way through, and then plasterboard and a breathable vapor barrier across the face of that. That's the only way to achieve any kind of compliance. So setting aside the fact it doesn't comply with building regulations, if we look down here, clients already had some time ago 6 inches of mineral quilt installed. Probably for the size of the property, maybe another £600-800 for another 6 inches of insulation, and that would have been proper insulation, building regulation compliant thickness, which doesn't need to be done because it's retrospective. It's just going to help with your heating bills, rather than spending thousands, probably £4,000 or £5,000, having this installed at the wrong location. It's not breathable. As you can see, you know, it's forming a solid plastic lid to the property. So any notion that it's breathable, open cell and all that rubbish is an absolute non-starter, in my view. We're much better off putting soffit vents on at low level. Traditional loft space, cold, drafty, which means no damp, no beetle infestation, no bugs crawling around the place, because you're creating an environment they don't like. By installing insulation here, we're trapping more heat and therefore more moisture in the property, which in turn is creating an environment that bugs and beetle infestation are like. The damp readings are relatively low. Slightly elevated perhaps, but nothing of major concern. And then we could come back up here in a few hours time and it'll be different, and we could certainly come back in next week or in the spring or in the summer or in the autumn and it'll be different. Okay, so that's just another little element of what we do on these particular spray foam exercises we're looking at for someone in particular. We're just seeing if there's any reasons why it doesn't need to be removed, and in the vast majority of cases obviously it can be removed and it'll be better for the building if it is taken out.